The Winter Dance Party Tour was put together to showcase some of the hot rising stars of the pop music, and it kicked off in late January 1959. The headliners were going to be Buddy Holly, who was going solo after leaving the Crickets a couple of months earlier in November, fellow Texan, the Big Bopper, J.P. Richardson, rising teenage rocker, Ritchie Valens, and Dion and the Belmonts. The tour was put together by GAC, the General Artists Corporation. The dates on the tour were hastily put together without any concerns for the safety of the performers. The tour schedule began on January 23rd in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the George Devine Ballroom and ended on February 15th at the Springfield Armory in Springfield, Illinois. 24 dates across 6 states were booked at the dead of winter, and along with the rural roads due to the interstate highways not being built yet, made travel conditions horrible. This hastily and cheaply put together tour was doomed from the start. The band that was hired to back up the performers were friends of Buddy Holly. Tommy Allsup played guitar, Waylon Jennings was the bassist, and Carl Bunch played drums. Frankie Sardo acted as the opening act. All of the performers had to travel to their dates on renovated school buses. The dilapidated buses were constantly breaking down due to weather conditions, and they were in the best conditions, even if the weather was good. 5 different buses were used during the first week and a half of the tour. Since the tour was planned on the cheap, no budget was made for roadies, so the musicians and performers had to lug around their own equipment. After playing their 8th date, an afternoon gig in Duluth, Minnesota, on January 31st, the conditions were so miserable that aerophobic Ritchie Valens wanted the group to charter a plane. On their way to their gig at the Riverside Ballroom in Green Bay, Wisconsin, their tour bus broke down. A last-minute early matinee spot show in nearby Appleton had to be canceled as well. Carl Bunch, the tour's drummer, developed frostbite on both of his feet due to the lack of heating in the bus, was taken to a nearby hospital. The rest of the group had to travel to Green Bay by taking a Chicago and Northwestern train to the show. Because of the hospitalization of Carl Bunch, Dion, Buddy Holly, and Ritchie Valens played drums on a rotating basis for each other during their sets. The promoters decided to add another spot show on the tour at the last minute, a gig on February 2nd at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa, so the performers had to travel by bus 350 miles from Green Bay in order to make it to the gig. Their 12th performance was going to take place the very next day in Moorhead, Minnesota, over 350 miles up north. Tired of the tour, Ritchie Valens called his manager, Bob Keane, and told him that he was leaving the winter dance party after their show in Moorhead. That gig was going to be aired live by KFGO. The manager of the Surf Ballroom, Carol Anderson, chartered a plane for the performers. They got hold of a Beechcraft 35 Bonanza, a small plane that could hold up to 3 passengers and a pilot. The Big Bopper, J.P. Richardson, caught the flu a couple of days earlier, wanted a seat on the plane, and asked Waylon Jennings for his seat. When Buddy heard that Waylon wasn't going to fly with him, he told him, "Well, I hope your damn bus freezes up." And he replied, "Well, I hope your plane crashes." Tommy also originally had the 3rd and final seat, but Ritchie Valens, who suffered from aerophobia, wanted to fly with Buddy Holly and JP. The seat was decided by coin flip, and Valens won and took the spot on the plane. The charter flight took off in wintry conditions and crashed not very far from the runway. The 3 stars would become part of rock and roll history, but the Winter Dance Party tour still went on. The scheduled show at the Armory in Moorhead, Minnesota was headlined by a 15-year-old Bobby Vee. The future pop star was brought in by local promoters because he knew all the words to the songs. He assembled a band that consisted of his brother Bill and some friends. This spotlight would eventually make him into a star. The GAC also brought in Jimmy Clanton, Fabian, and Frankie Avalon, the 3 rising pop stars on the tour, to headline the remaining shows of the Winter Dance. Tommy Allsup and Waylon Jennings remained with the tour, which lasted 2 more weeks. This was because the head promoter of the tour, General Artists Corporation, promised Waylon Jennings to pay for a first-class plane ticket for himself and Tommy Allsup to attend Buddy Holly's funeral in Lubbock, Texas, in exchange for playing the highly promoted Moorhead, Minnesota show. They played and were about to head back to Texas, but the plane tickets never arrived. Waylon and Allsup continued to play the remaining dates of the Winter Dance Party. He sang Holly's songs and had to fight with the promoters for the money that was owed after the tour ended on February 15th. Waylon was paid less than half of the money that he initially agreed to. After the tour was completed, Waylon took Buddy's guitar and amp and stored it in a locker inside the Grand Central Terminal station in New York City. He mailed the key to the locker to the widow of Buddy, Maria Holly.